Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Britain has been plunged into a period of mourning to mark the death of its former monarch, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. At the moment of her passing, the throne passed immediately and without ceremony to the heir, Charles, the former Prince of Wales. King Charles III will officially be proclaimed the King on Saturday at St James's Palace in London. The Queen's state funeral is expected to take place at Westminster Abbey within the next 10 days. Thousands of mourners have gathered at the gates of Buckingham Palace, Balmoral and Windsor Castle, all paying tribute to the 96-year-old former head of state.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure. In the words of one of my more sympathetic correspondents, it has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
So what I say to you now, as your Queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart. First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being. In good times and bad, she never lost her capacity to smile and laugh, nor to inspire others with her warmth and kindness.
In our lives, Mr. President, we have seen the worst, but also the best of our continent. We have witnessed how quickly things can change for the better. But we know that we must work hard to maintain the benefits of the post-war world. Inevitably, a long life can pass by many milestones. My own is no exception. But I thank you all, and the many others at home and overseas, for your touching messages of great kindness. At this meeting, the Commonwealth will be charged with demonstrating leadership, often in practical ways, on an agenda of global issues and drawing on the distinctive contribution of our members. I wish you every success in this endeavour.
Tributes have flooded in from around the globe, and all of the domestic news publications have displayed an outpouring of grief. The Times marks the moment with a striking photo of the Queen from her coronation in 1953, alongside the words, "A life in service." The paper's back page carries a quotation from her Christmas broadcast in 1957, the first to be televised. "I cannot lead you into battle. I do not give you laws or administer justice, but I can do something else. I can give you my heart and my devotion to all these islands and to all the peoples of our brotherhood of nations." Our hearts are broken, says the Daily Mail, with a portrait of the Queen from 1952, while she was Princess Elizabeth. How to find the words? The paper's columnist Sarah Vine asks. Our grief is 100 different emotions, all of them hard to grasp. The Daily Telegraph reprints the Queen's own message of condolence to the families of the victims of the 9/11 attacks. Grief is the price we pay for love. US President Joe Biden referenced the comment in his tribute and recalled how she stood in solidarity with the US in its darkest days. We'll be looking at more newspaper headlines later on in the show. Until then, let's hear from a lady who has been fortunate enough to spend many private moments with the royal household. Polly Alakaja, the Director General of the Show Musa Yar'Adua Foundation. She joins me now from Abuja. Polly Alakija, thank you so much for taking out your time to speak with me today. There are some stories where words fail, and of course, with the passing of Her Majesty, trying to think of living life without her is pretty difficult for millions of us across the globe. Can you just tell us your initial thoughts once you heard about her passing?
Goodness me, Juliana, I didn't want to believe it. I actually gasped and stood up when the news came through with goosebumps all over me on my balcony here in Abuja, looking towards Aso Rock in the distance. And it's the shifting of tectonic plates, isn't it? She's been such a backdrop to my life and the life of so many of us, her life history. It's a new era, and I'm not ready to let go of the old era yet. So very moving. And clearly, as we can see from the reaction of people around the world, she touched so many lives in so many different ways. And it's such a time for us all to reflect on our lives, the highs and lows of our lives, to which the British monarchy, for many of us, has been a backdrop. So I'm not ready to let go yet. It's hard.
No, I think so many will agree with you. I don't think it's sunk in just yet. And, we've gone into full gear, as you would expect, here in Britain. Operation London Bridge is well underway. Preparations are being made as we speak. You've been fortunate enough to share a close bond with the royal household. I won't be asking for any juicy secrets because I wouldn't expect you to reveal them, but what are some of your fondest, most treasured memories of Her Majesty?
Oh, goodness me. There's a few very special ones. The ones I would like to just mention here, because not just my relationship with the royal family and Her Majesty, but also Nigeria and the Nigerian people, and the Nigerian arts and culture sector, of which she was passionately interested in, as is the British royal family. And so I've had the honor and occasion to be part of events that have celebrated the royal family. And the artist Ben Nwonwu is a name that comes up time and time again in relationship with Her Majesty. Her Majesty knew Ben Nwonwu closely, and in fact had many of his pieces in her collection. Ben Nwonwu did numerous portraits of Her Majesty, of which we used one life-size bronze sculpture of Her Majesty to welcome Prince Charles, the now King Charles III, to welcome him to Lagos. And we brought out this monumental sculpture of the Queen by Ben Nwonwu, surrounded with flowers. So her history and her relationship with Nigerian arts goes back a long way. In fact, in her private collection, in her private apartment, are a few pieces by Ben Nwonwu. One in particular I want to mention because it speaks volumes, and this is a portrait, a bronze bust of a Nigerian artist, female artist, Afi Ekong. The Queen bought this portrait. It wasn't gifted to her. She went to Ben's studio and bought this portrait of this Nigerian female artist in 1957. Wow. And this portrait was kept in her own private royal apartments. So that's how close she was to Nigeria, Nigerian arts, culture, and clearly a strong woman and an advocate for women, and manifested in this purchase of this bronze bust that was in her royal apartments. She had other pieces of Nigerian art in her collection, but that one to me is particularly meaningful.
Thank you, Polly, for sharing that. You said that Her Majesty was an advocate for women, and I think men too. And I think you realise now we live in such a I would say, should we call it cancel culture? And it can be quite a dark climate. And I think with Her Majesty, she was above that, wasn't she? She was able to rise above that. She was the first kind of iconic, globe-trotting celebrity, if we call it. She kind of invented that. Everybody else followed after her. Can you talk about her character? And I do hope the leaders are watching, because character is just so fundamental, and I think people can sometimes forget that on the greasy rise to the top.
Yes, character, goodness me. And I'm speaking to you from the Shehu Musa Yar'Adua Foundation in Abuja, which is here to represent the values and character of the late Shehu Musa Yar'Adua. And the Queen was one such person as well. Her life was one of values and representing her values. She was this great leader. She was this great figurehead. She did it modestly, and she did it humbly and with respect for everybody around her. It was such a life of service, and that really resonates from my seat and my position here. That's what this foundation represents. It is what is true leadership, and how do you really represent values? And she absolutely was a trailblazer in showing and being that person. And in terms of thinking about her legacy, I don't think Her Majesty would have ever thought about it as a personal legacy. It's a legacy of leadership. It's a legacy of how does she support her family in continuing this life of unquestioned service for the people of Great Britain and the Commonwealth and beyond.
Just lastly, Polly, how much of a huge loss is this for Britain? When we talk about Britain, really soft power is one of our greatest powers, the draw of Her Majesty the Queen. And I think that was made pretty clear during the Platinum Jubilee celebrations. Millions turned out. There has been scandal over the years. You know, show me a family that doesn't have scandal. It doesn't exist. But do you think this transition will be smooth? Is the crown above the Queen? And yes, what are your thoughts on that? Well,
the Queen did a thorough job, and a thorough job involves ensuring a clear succession plan. And I think we've all observed Her Majesty in the last years and her latter years preparing her family for the roles that they collectively are going to step up to embracing and delivering on her vision of this life of service. So I believe that she has ensured that the succession will happen. I think she's very strategically spread the responsibilities across the family. And the love of the British royal family, I think, does go beyond just Her Majesty. And I think we have seen this personally, you and I, the incredible draw to the British royal family, both in Nigeria. We just need to know that any royal is coming close by and everybody wants to be at that event. So the British royal family stands strong, and I have no doubt she will be remembered fondly, deeply, but the loyalty to the British monarchy remains solid, absolutely. I have no doubt about that.
Polly Alakija, Director General at the Shehu Musa Yar'Adua Foundation in Abuja. Thank you so much for your time today on the show.
Yes, thank you very much, Juliana.
Coming up on Channel's Business Global, we will be assessing the details of Operation London Bridge with Harry Burns, the Vice President of the public affairs firm Crestview Strategy, and we'll listen to a statement made from royal commentator Thomas Mace Archer-Mills, one of the first commentators to speak with Channel's television once the announcement of the Queen's death was made public. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Let's resume by having a look at some headlines from British newspapers today. Several papers, including The Guardian, opt for a picture of the Queen from the start of her reign. The powerful portrait, captured by Sir Cecil Beaton, shows the Queen wearing her crown and carrying her sceptre at her coronation. The Mirror chooses a more recent photo of the Queen, showing her famous profile. The paper decides against a headline, instead simply saying, "Thank you." And this from The Sun. The editors there using this iconic black and white portrait of the Queen in her later years with a thoughtful, soft smile. The Sun and our readers loved you, the paper says. We are proud you were our Queen. Charles has now become King of the United Kingdom and 14 other realms, ending a wait of more than 70 years, the longest by an heir in British history. The role will be daunting. His late mother was overwhelmingly popular and respected, which will become clearer over the coming days. Well, for more on what we can expect, let's now bring in Harry Burns, the Vice President of the public affairs firm Crestview Strategy. Harry Burns, thank you so much for taking out your time to speak with me today. I think it's probably best we start with your initial thoughts on Her Majesty the Queen's passing yesterday.
Thanks, Juliana. Obviously, it's a very sad day. It's one of these moments that you always know is coming, but you actually never really think is actually going to happen. We're based in Westminster, and so walking around the streets, there was a sense of shock, sadness, and it was just sort of sinking into people. Being an English person, the first thing I did is going into a pub. In a normally quite raucous British pub, it was very quiet. Everyone was watching the news and reflecting on their own personal experience with the Queen. Some have met her, but obviously many haven't. But they all still feel a personal connection to her. It was just a sense of shock and trying to come to grips with what a Britain without Queen Elizabeth in charge is going to look like.
And I think that's the big question right now. I know you've worked in politics for a long time, so you're used to the kind of pomp and ceremony. Can you tell us a little bit more about Operation Bridge and what we potentially could be seeing over the next few days and weeks and months?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, this is a plan which has been in place, I think, since 1960 was when they first started to plan for the Queen's, eventual passing. It's a plan that builds on previous plans for the passing of previous British monarchs, and it's meticulously planned down to the very last detail. And so, from the moment the Queen dies, that's referred to as D-Day. And that triggers a whole series of processes. Because the Queen died in Balmoral, which is in Scotland for viewers that don't know, it triggers a separate plan called Operation Unicorn, which is basically a special plan to bring the Queen's body down to Parliament. To Westminster, so she will lay in state in Scotland in Holyrood Palace. And before going onto a special train, and the train service will be met in St Pancras by a special group of people before her body is taken to Buckingham Palace and eventually lying in state in Westminster Hall, which is part of the Palace of Westminster. She will be there, I believe, for 3 days, and people, so her former subjects, will be able to come and pay their respects by filing past the coffin. I believe it's going to be open 23 hours a day, so to cope with the crowds that are expected. What's very interesting about the London Bridge plan is that officials have cautioned that they genuinely think there's a chance that London might actually be full on the day of her funeral, which is so the funeral is expected to take place on the 19th of September. All of these plans can change, but this is just what's anticipated. King Charles III, as he is now, is going to meet with Liz Truss, the new Prime Minister, and her cabinet, I believe today, where they discuss the final plans. And he's going to address the nation at 6 p.m. tonight, when all of the exact timings are going to be laid out for everyone. But we're expecting huge turnouts here. Our office is in Westminster, and so we think that we're going to find it very difficult to get into work for a few days. As the whole country comes to pay their respects, and of course people from right around the world, including the Commonwealth. We expect leaders to come to the UK from all around the world. to come and pay their respects to the Queen. That meant so much to so many people, and not just those in Britain.
Thank you for that detailed outline there. Before I let you go, Harry, I know Crestview Strategy advise very senior and high net worth individuals. So while I've got you, I better take some of your consultation. But what do people do now? What do diplomats do, businesses? We know over the next few days there are no lockdown restrictions here in the UK. Many an event is supposed to be taking place. We've got a UN General Assembly gathering in New York within the next couple of weeks. How do you advise a senior individual on statements that should be made or the attire that they should be wearing?
Well, I mean, look, it's obviously very important that everybody shows their, pays their respects. That's rule one, of advising sort of any politician or business around these types of moments. But of course, at some point the world is going to have to go back to normal. And I think the Queen is somebody, she was somebody who, of course, being the monarch, she was used to pomp and ceremony, but she was, everybody always said that she was very humble in person. And so, so I think it's obviously very important that people, that people show that they are marking this moment. But at some point, they're going to have to kick back into normal gear. And so, even though there's technically 10 days of mourning in the UK, I think immediately showing straight afterwards, that you are marking this momentous event by putting out sort of a tweet or a press statement honouring her memory, and then essentially going back to some sort of normal state of being until the 19th of September. So that's expected to be her funeral day, and it's the day when it's the full national day of mourning. And so obviously, again, I would expect businesses and politicians to again pay their respects on that day. But essentially, after that, the country will have to click back into some sort of sense of normality.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Harry Burns, Vice President of the public consultation and public relations firm Crestview Strategy. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Juliana.
Our next guest, Thomas Mace Archer-Mills, is a royal commentator who has spent the last few years covering the daily activities of the royal household. He was one of the first individuals that spoke with the Channel's crew here in London immediately after the announcement of Her Majesty's death.
First and foremost in my mind comes all of the countries that Her Majesty has nurtured for 70 years. And for so many of those years, the turmoils that the Commonwealth has seen, when we look at a lot of the African states and a lot of what's happened there, it was Her Majesty who stepped in, Her Majesty who sorted out the governments of the day. And for as much as she's loved her people here in the United Kingdom and her realms of which she is Queen, there are so many more countries out there that she took under her wing, who she helped. And we look at the Commonwealth Charter of 2013, which really ensured and enshrined that human rights would be extended to her people all around the world. 2.6 billion people in the Commonwealth. So as today we woke up normally, everything seemed to be going well. It was just a normal Thursday. And then this afternoon, the heavens opened, the rains came down, and the rainbows took Her Majesty to be with her father, her mother, and her late departed husband.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I will see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global.